While all of the attention today in Washington is on the looming fiscal cliff, President Obama's administration is quietly handing over billions of dollars to the United Nations in the name of global warming. Hi, I'm Jim Inhofe, a United States Senator from Oklahoma, ranking member of the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works, and the chief critic of President Obama's far-left green agenda. Over the past decade, I've been leading the charge in Washington to make sure the global warming hoax is exposed. A big part of that effort has been putting the spotlight on what takes place at the United Nations annual global warming conferences. And while I've been unable to travel to the last few conferences, I have counted on groups like CFACT to provide on-the-ground reports. This year's UN conference is in Doha, Qatar, and I'm pleased that Lord Christopher Monckton is there working with his partners, including CFACT, Executive Director Craig Rucker and Mark Morano of the ClimateDepot.com. I'm certainly looking forward to the release of Climate Depot's new report that debunks the alarmist extreme weather claims. Last time I attended the Global Warming Conference was in 2009, when I spent only 3 hours at the gathering in Copenhagen. I arrived just after President Obama, Secretary Clinton, and Senator Kerry promised world leaders that the United States would act on cap and trade. I was in Copenhagen as a one-man truth squad. I said that the United States Senate would never ratify the Kyoto Treaty or pass cap and trade. I was right, and now even the liberal media is admitting that these conferences are pointless. As Der Spiegel put it, the conference in Doha is, quote, turning into a farce. The UK Guardian said, quote, Doha is a byword for stalemate and failure. And the New York Times reported that after the failure of the Rio Plus 20 conference that was held in June, quote, more and more people may be ignoring these global confabs. That's what this is. It's not surprising that this year's conference has been ignored. Remember, EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson admitted to me that the EPA's global warming regulations are based primarily on the now exposed ClimateGate science of that's been completely discredited, the UN IPCC. Remember, the Atlantic Monthly said, of ClimateGate, and this is a quote, they said, the stink of intellectual corruption is overpowering. And the UK Telegraph wrote that, quote, this is the worst scientific scandal of our generation. That's what all this is based on. Of course, the focus of this year's Global Warming Conference, like all of the conferences before, is not the environment. It's about one thing, spreading the wealth around. As the Associated Press reported, one of the main challenges will be raising climate aid for poor countries at a time when budgets are strained by fiscal turmoil, unquote. 3 years ago, President Obama helped create the United Nations Green Slush Fund that would redistribute over $100 billion from developed countries to developing countries. And while he has been racking up huge deficits and talking up tax increases, the president has already sent billions of American taxpayer dollars to the United Nations, and he's managed to do it quietly so that no one will notice. I mean, how many billions have we already handed over to in the last 3 years? It's hard to tell. There appears to be little more in the way of transparency. Bloomberg reports that the European Union, the United States, Japan, and other developed nations paid out in the range of $23 to $34 billion. Of course, this is just the beginning. The United Nations climate chief, Christiana Figueres, explained her job this way. And I'm going to quote, you won't believe this. This is what she said. It is the most inspiring job in the world. This is the job that she has overseeing this thing. Because what we are doing here is we are inspiring government, private sector, the civil society to make the biggest transformation that they have ever undertaken. The Industrial Revolution was also a transformation, but it wasn't a guided transformation from a centralized policy perspective. This is a centralized transformation that is taking place because governments have decided that they need to listen to science. So it's a very, very different transformation, and one that is going to make the life of everyone on the planet very different. You know, this is the top UN climate chief, and she sees herself as overseeing the transformation of the lives of everyone on the planet. At the Global Warming Conference in Milan several years ago, I asked an African delegate that I happened to know why he had attended, and he said, well, it has nothing to do with science. It's because it's the biggest party of the year. It's time to put an end to these lavish, absurd global warming parties and focus on the real problems that we face. In the meantime, I'm thankful that groups like CFACT are willing and able to expose this farce for what it is. Your work is critical, but as long as you are there, make sure you enjoy some of the party. Remember, the worst crisis that happened in Copenhagen is when they ran out of caviar. So get some good stuff before it's gone.